everybody. I'm your host to be back. 3 videos in one day. That's right. I'm back. Eyes back. Part 4. We're talking about the savagery of God. I said we're talking about the savagery of the God of the Bible. That's right. He's a savage, y'all. He's a savage. Well, what I mean he's a savage? Well, when you read about the Bible God, the God of the Old Testament, the God of the Hebrew Bible, everywhere he's savage. Every problem that this God of the Bible deals with, he deals with it through violence. There's a difference between the God of the Old Testament and the God of the New Testament. The God of the Old Testament, straight savage. Straight savage. And you can hear his savagery when you listen to YouTubers like Israel Struggle Doctrine. Facts upon facts. Did y'all hear Israel Doctrine's most recent foray on YouTube? Did y'all hear how he condemned the Hebrew Israelites as wicked and talked that murder, death, kill stuff? Hananiah, get out. I say, get out, Hananiah. When you listen to Israel's Struggle Doctrine, you are listening to the angry and nasty and terribly venomous, proud and jealous and petty and unjust God of the Old Testament. Because that nigga over there, he doesn't condemn Hebrew Israelite theology. No. He wants to murder the people. Israel Doctrine is bloodthirsty, just like his God. I said, Hananiah, my nigga, you're in a cult of one. Hananiah, you're in a cult of one. That bitch ass nigga Israel Doctrine, he won't even let you talk. He talks you down when you try to straighten out his murder, death, kill theology against the Hebrew Israelites. I don't know. I don't know, my nigga. Hananiah, I don't know, my nigga. Are you a man or a mouse? Do you have a spine? Why do you think that you must stay and sit under Israel Doctrine's murder, death, kill doctrine of those that don't conform with his theology? We ain't talking about that, but my God, I saw you try to stand up for yourself, but you didn't do a good job, Hananiah. Hananiah, what's so good about Israel Doctrine that you think you must sit under him and read for him and be a part of what he got going on? It's just a matter of time, though. We're talking about this savage God of the Old Testament. Straight savage. Now, in times past, people like Sonnetter and others have made the claims that the Bible is for and pro-rape. If the God of the Bible is for rape, the God of the Bible is a rapist. And I would absolutely agree that the God of the Bible is a rapist. And we're going to show you just how much of a rapist this savage Old Testament God was back then. That's right. The Bible absolutely condones rape. It's something about raping young girls and women that the Bible concurs with. Now they got all of these justifications and end around understandings, and they try to fix it up. But at the end of the day, it's rape. It's rape. As you should know, women in the Old Testament were not highly valued by the Israelite men and by the Israelite God. They just weren't. For we read in Exodus 20, for instance, that a woman was the part of a property of a man. That's right. Exodus 20, verse 16 and 17, the woman falls under the property of a man. Exodus 20, 16 and 17. It's right here. I said Exodus chapter 20, verse 16 and 17. Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant, nor his ox, nor his ass, nor anything that is thy neighbor's. As you notice, the woman is part of the 10 Commandments. She is the 10th commandment. She is important to a man, second only to a man's house. See? It doesn't say thou shalt not covet or lust after a neighbor's wife. No. Don't lust after a neighbor's home or his house. That's what's most important. And secondly, thou shalt not lust or covet after thy neighbor's wife. And then his manservant, maidservant, his ox, nor his ass, nor anything that is thy neighbor's. So understand that the woman she falls under the heading of a man's property, not a man's most important property. And so it is listed, a woman is listed second. The man's house, the man's home, is his most valuable prized possession. Secondly, a wife. Thirdly, a manservant. Fourthly, a maidservant. Fifthly, an ox, an ass, and then everything else that a man owns. But this is about ownership and property. How disrespectful that this savage God and men who proclaim their love for this savage God come up with the 10 Commandments, and they make the woman part of a man's property. But the disrespect is that she's not the most important piece of property of a man. She comes in second behind a man's home. Gee willikers. I mean, this is just facts. A woman in the Old Testament was the property of a man. And in the great Ten Commandments that we know all about, on the church wall, on your home wall, the Ten Commandments states that a man's most valuable property is his home, first and foremost. Secondly, his most prized possession is the wife. If that alone doesn't tell you how the God of the Bible and the men of the Old Testament felt about the importance of property, then I don't know what does. How do you put a house as more important than a wife? And so when we start with the small things, like the Ten Commandments, they are the telltale signs that God don't give a fuck about the feminine persuasion. That God and the men of the Old Testament, they don't put very much stock in girls, in females, in women. The Ten Commandments is the litmus test to how women are going to be treated in Old Testament days. If women are the property of a man, and not even the most valuable property of a man, they are ranked second, they are second string. They're coming off the bench like a first string quarterback that's been hurt, and they bring in the second string quarterback. The Ten Commandments lists a woman secondly as the most prideful possession of a man. Not first, but second. And knowing that Moses went up to the mountain, Mount Sinai, and communed with God. And God took his own fingers and wrote the Ten Commandments on 2 tablets of stone. And put a man's house before he put a man's wife. What does that tell you about this God? That this God who mentions a man's house first, you know they say God himself wrote the Ten Commandments. Well, God's priorities are fucked up. What's wrong with God's priorities? Why does God prioritize a man's house before he mentions a man's wife? That's not nice. But this is the savagery that I speak of regarding this God. He's a savage. A woman with a whole heartbeat, with feelings and emotions. She plays second fiddle to a man's home in the Ten Commandments. This is how we know, those of us who are smart, those of us who are human, those of us who understand stuff, this is how we understand that the Bible is full of shit and the God of Israel is full of shit. At least mention the man's wife first and then a man's home. But no, it mentions a man's home first and then a man's wife. And in that property comes a man's cows and horses, chickens, oxen, and asses, right behind the woman. So it's not a great leap. It's not a great leap to believe that this same God that puts material goods before he puts flesh and blood is not a far leap to say that the God of the Old Testament is a rapist and that he encourages rape and that he condones rape. Anybody who says differently, they simply trying to cover it up. But it doesn't take a rocket scientist to see that from a woman being second on the menu of a man's property, to go from that to say, see that woman over there? Take the pussy however you want. You can rape her. You might get in a little trouble, but the God of the Bible absolutely condones rape. Now let me give you a few instances of this raping God. Deuteronomy is a classic example of how the Bible makes excuses and exemptions for the act of rape. It just does. Let's read a little bit about it. I ain't gotta lie. Just tell you about it. The book of Deuteronomy, the 21st chapter, starting with verse 10. Look at this. Look at this right here. It says various laws. When thou goest forth to war against thine enemies, and the Lord thy God hath delivered them into thine hands, and thou hast taken them captive, and seest among the captives a beautiful woman, and hast a desire unto her, that thou wouldst have her to thy wife, then thou shalt bring her home to thine house, and she shall shave her head and pare her nails, and she shall put the raiment of her captivity from her, and shall remain in thine house, and bewail her father and her mother a full month. And after that thou shalt go in unto her, and be her husband, and she shall be thy wife. Now, I know what some of you all are saying. That's not rape. That's not rape. He married the woman. Nowhere in there do we read about mutual understanding. Nowhere do we read about how the woman felt about becoming the wife of the man of the people that killed her mother and father. Nowhere does it talk about love and lust and attraction and ooh wee, her panties are wet for a man. Nope. Nope, nope, nope. Do they use the word rape? No, they don't use the word rape. But it's clear that this is an example of how rape is condoned by God in the Old Testament. There is a war, and after the Israelites kill all the men and young boys and all infirmed ladies and wives and mothers, non-virgins. You see, the Israelites they had a they had a thing for virgins. Something about them, they didn't like women that had already had a man. But after the war was over and the Israelites won, and an Israelite man saw a woman that was fine as all get out. She was beautiful, and his dick got hard, and he wanted her. The Bible doesn't say that the man tried to date her and get to know her, ask her out on a date, see if there's mutual attraction, see if there's a mutual vibe. Is she a whole vibe? See if the woman is interested. See if the woman is sexually attracted to the man who just killed her mama and her daddy and her family. No, the Bible doesn't say that. The Bible says when the Israelites go to war against their enemies, and the Lord thy God hath delivered them unto your hands, and thou hast taken them captive. The enemy goes into slavery, they go into captivity. It says, and then it says, and you see among the slaves, among the captives, you see among them a beautiful woman, and you have a desire unto her. In other words, she makes your manhood stand up. All these captive women, and you see one that looks good to you. It don't matter what the woman thinks. It doesn't matter what the woman feels. It doesn't matter if the captive woman has a desire, a fancy, a lusting for the man. It don't matter. It's all about what the man sees in this captive. And so we read, and seeth among the captives a beautiful woman, and you have a desire for her, that thou would have her to wife. See, they use this word wife very loosely. When we say wife today, we think about a mutual love and lust and respect and passion between a man and a woman. That's not what being a wife was back then. It didn't matter what the wife felt about the man. And if she was a captive and she was beautiful and a man saw her, instead of saying, and he wanted to rape her, they try to clean it up. They clean it up by using the wife word. Every time you see wife, that's the code words for the man about to rape a woman without her permission and without her consent. So to make it look good in the eyes of God, to make it look good in the eyes of humanity, to make it look like the Israelites were not savage, third world imbeciles, they clean it up and they call this captive, this beautiful captive woman that must fuck the enemy, she gets the label wife. Do they ask her? Do they ask her if she's interested in marrying the man or the army that killed her mother and father? No, they don't. Think about it. What woman is going to have a love and a lust and an attraction for the people or the man who's responsible for killing her mother and father and brothers? Hardly none. Hardly none. So this becomes a marriage, a one-sided marriage, where the woman is not trying to marry the man. She don't have a say. And when women don't have a say about their bodies and men enter their bodies, we have a word for that. Today, we call that rape. And so the Bible, the Mosaic law, the Levitical law, it condones rape. Nowhere in the passages do the captive women speak. Nowhere do we hear their voices and their opinions as to becoming the wife of the motherfucker that murdered their mother and father. And so we read, when this man sees a beautiful woman, this Hebrew Israelite man sees a woman amongst the enemy and they have her captive. And he says, I got to have some of that punani. I got to have some of that vajayjay. I got to have some of that scungy brown. I got to have some of that stank box. I got to see what the nappy dugout is really about. And so the Levitical law, they dress up rape. They dress up rape as marriage when it comes to the captive women who don't want to marry their captors for many reasons. She's not attracted to him. He's the guy that killed her mother and father. So many reasons. But she don't have a say. She don't have a voice. And again, when a woman is not in charge of who she marries, i.e. who she sleeps with, i.e. who she has sex with, i.e. who she fucks, that's called rape. And so, and the Israelite seeth the Israelite man, he sees amongst the captives a beautiful woman and has a desire unto her, not a love. See, desire indicates lust and passion. Desire does not indicate love or being in love. No. Desire is lust, not love. Let's do something real quick. Synonyms for desire.
Here are some synonyms for desire: wish, want, fancy, inclination, aspiration.
Yeah. Crave. Yeah. Top synonyms for desire include longing, yearning, craving, wish, and appetite. Wow. Craving and yearning, hankering, pine, ache, appetite, hunger, thirst, urge, passion, inclination, lust, passion, libido, itch. Goddamn. Did y'all hear the word love, Love, at any time? No, you didn't. So the man who sees a beautiful captive woman, he's not in love with her. He doesn't love her. But marriage should be between two people who love one another. Yet this woman is about to become this man's wife, not based on love, but based on desire and yearning and lust and wanting and craving. Well, what is he craving? Y'all not dumb. You know what that man is craving. He's craving sex. That's why it says she was a beautiful woman. But instead of saying the man wants to go and take the vajayjay, rape the pussy, take it, they bring in a word. They bring in a word that satisfies rape. And that is wife. If she's my wife, then I can have sex with her without the stigma of being a rapist. You see the word games and the word salad that the Bible plays? They bring in the sanctity of the word wife. But from the man's point of view, it says that the man, he saw a beautiful woman amongst the captives. He desired. We just did a quick synonym for the word desire. So the man, he doesn't want to wife her based on love. No. He wants to wife her so he can fuck her. But he doesn't want to be labeled a rapist. So the Bible uses semantics, wordplay, and word salad. I said the Bible uses semantics. Instead of saying the word rape, they use the word wife, which takes away the stigma of what he's going to do. But it's clear what this man is going to do, because it didn't say he saw a beautiful woman amongst the captives and he fell in love with her. It doesn't say that. It says he found a beautiful woman among the captives whom he desired. Well, finish the sentence. He desired to fuck her, to copulate with her, to have sex with her. But they have an order in the way they do their rape game, the way they put the rape game down. They bring in the word wife to satisfy the desire and the craving and the rape. Got it? It's easy to see the Bible absolutely condones rape. They just dress it up and they sanitize it and they use words that are palatable to our sensibilities. But the man doesn't love her. Why would you marry a woman that you're not in love with? That's how we think today. Every couple is in love. That's why they married. It's deeper than desire. It's deeper than fucking and sucking. It's deeper than sex. A man and a woman, or a man and a man, or a woman and a woman, today they get married for love, not for lust. They get married for love, not for desire. But in the Old Testament times, you could wife a woman based on desire. See? The Israelite man, he sees amongst the captives a beautiful woman and has a desire, not a love, not I'm in love with her, but he has a desire. And we read desire means to lust after and to crave. To crave. He lusts after this, he desires and lusts after this beautiful woman. But he can't because they're trying to be a first world society. They're trying to be a civilized nation. So they create a law to get around rape. And so they talk about he gonna have to make her the wife. The wife. The wife. And so what does he do? Without her permission, without the woman's permission, the Jewish law, the Hebrew law, the Israelites' law says, then thou, Israelite man, shall bring her home to thine house, and she shall shave her head. Wow. And pare her nails. Wow. And she shall put the raiment of her captivity from off her, and shall remain in thine house, and bewail her father and her mother a full month. And after that, thou, Israelite man, shall go in unto her, have sex with her, and be her husband, and she shall be thy wife. They call that marriage in the Bible. Look at the stipulations they put on this woman. They shame the shit out of this woman. A woman's hair, to this day, is her glory. I think there's a Bible scripture. A woman's hair, glory, Bible. Yeah, there it is. First Corinthians 15, 1 Corinthians 11:15. A woman's hair is her glory. Is a phrase derived from 1 Corinthians 15:11. But if that woman let me get that 1 second. But if that woman, but that if a woman, excuse me, but that if a woman has long hair, it is her glory. For long hair is given to her for a covering. Right there. I said a woman's hair is her glory, even to this very day. A woman with long hair, a woman with hair at all, it's her glory. What is the first thing? What is the first thing that they do to these captive women? What's the first thing that the Israelite army does when they see a fine ass woman that they want to fuck? They call themselves marrying her. That's coded language for I'm gonna fuck this bitch. But the first thing they do, they take her home. They don't ask the woman if she wants to be a wife number 10. They take her. And then they belittle her, and they shame her, and they make her submit. Then thou shalt bring her home to thine house. And when she goes home, they call the local barber, and he comes in there and he shaves that woman's head. Got her looking like a female Mr. Clean, a female Isaac Hayes, a female Michael Jordan, Baldy Scaldy. all her long, beautiful coif, her beautiful coiffure, her beautiful mane. The glory of a woman is her hair, the Bible says. And they belittle her and demean her and disrespect her by making her cut off her glory. Walk around looking like nothing compares to you. Who sings that song? Nothing compares to you. Sinead O'Connor. Imagine Sinead O'Connor. If you don't know who she is, they be having her looking like Sinead O'Connor. Let me find a good picture of Sinead O'Connor. I don't know why they keep giving me these close up. Show me her whole head, goddammit. Shit. Sinead O'Connor. That's her. When they take these women home, they shave these women's heads, got them looking like straight up Sinead O'Connor. Now, I personally think there's something rather sexy about a woman with a shaved head. Maybe I'm just freaky like that. But I prefer hair over a bald head. It's a little quizzical sexual quirk of mine. It's a quirk. I like a bald-headed woman. Something about it. But I like hair better. So the man takes this beautiful captive woman home without her consent. Trust me, these women don't want to go home and marry the man that murdered their fathers and mothers and brothers and uncles. They don't want to sleep with these men. And the Israelite men know that. So they create a bullshit law called marriage and give her the title of wife so that they can sleep, so they can rape these women. They can rape these women in the name of wifery. But they gotta shame. They gotta belittle these women. Shave her motherfucking head. What they do next? If she's got, say, shave her head. And secondly, after she gets a Sinead O'Connor baldy scaldy, if she got long nails, fingernails, they break all her fingernails off. They give her nubs. She got to walk around with hardly no fingernails. The Bible says they pare her nails. They get the clippers out. Clip, 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 clip. All her nails down to the stubs. Shaved head. Stubby nails. Stubby nails. And whatever clothes she came with, the cultural garments of her homeland, the way she dressed when she was a free person, they take away her garments. They take away her raiment. That's her clothes. It doesn't say they give her any clothes. Maybe she walks around bucket naked. But she shall put the raiment of her captivity from off her. And she will remain in her captive's house and cry and bewail and cry for her dead mother and father, or for her imprisoned mother or father, or for her mother and father that she probably will never see again if they are alive. She gonna cry for 30 days. Every day for 1 month, she is to be bald-headed, no fingernails, butt naked, no clothes of her former culture, and she is to cry and mourn for her mother and father whether they be dead or alive, free or imprisoned, for a month. And the new husband, the new Israelite husband, you better believe he's got a calendar. And you better believe every day he's doing this. Every day he's marking off the calendar. He's waiting to get 30 X's. 30 X's. And on day 31, he's going in there without her consent, because he is now her husband without her consent, and he's going to break her back. He's going to have her knees touching her earlobes. He's going to play battleship. He's going to lay on his back and make her blow him to smithereens. Remember, this ain't about love. He only married that woman because he desired her. And desire is not love. And he's going to fuck her over and over. And he's going to put her in rotation with his other wives. And she ain't got no say-so. And I say again, when women are not in control of their bodies and men have sex with them, they call it rape. Any Hebrew Israelite, any Israelite, any Christian, any Jew who says otherwise is a damn liar. Nowhere in this law does a woman have to give her consent or her permission to become married. Nowhere. It's all about the man and his lust and desire and passion and longing and yearning. That's all a desire is. You know what they say. What love got to do with it? Not a damn thing. Love ain't got a damn thing to do with marriage in Old Testament times. Love ain't got a damn thing to do with marriage in the Old Testament times. It's all about she looks good to me. I want her. But the Israelites evidently have some type of manners. So they clean that shit up and use euphemisms. The word wife in this instance is a euphemism. A euphemism is nice language for something else. We can't say the man desires her and he's going to go and rape her. So we're going to find a euphemistic word, a nice language word, to say that he's going to have sex with that woman, and the word is wife. Nowhere in this situation where there's a war and there are some captives amongst the Israelites, nowhere is there a mention of love or consent on the part of the woman. She doesn't give consent, and the man doesn't need consent. He just sees the beautiful captive, snatches her up, takes her home, has his barber, or he does it himself. He shames her by shaving her beautiful hair, giving her a baldy scaldy, giving her a Sinead O'Connor, rip off her fingernails, and let her cry for a month. And on day 31, he comes in there with a hard on that can't wait. And he tells this new wife, lay down and throw your legs back and take this dick. The very man that possibly and probably murdered her boyfriend, her husband, her mother, and her father. She has to marry that motherfucker. You know damn well that ain't no consent. What woman in her right mind falls in love with the man that murdered her mother and father? That alone lets you know this is not about love. This is about control and a man's lower and basest desires to simply see a beautiful foreign woman that his dick has got to have. Yes, the Bible absolutely condones the act of rape. And this is an example. These women don't have a say-so as to if they even like the man that wants to wife her. We know human nature. It's not in the nature of a woman to be attracted to a man who murders her family. This woman has nothing but hatred for the man that would murder her family and take her captive. Her pussy is not getting wet at all. Now, going beyond that, there's other examples. But I want to show you that God himself has a thing for raping. Oh, you didn't know that? I want to show you that God himself, he knows that raping is a wonderful way to shame women or to shame a people's women. What am I talking about? Zechariah. The book of Zechariah. You might try to say, well, at the very least, you might try to say, well, that's just the Israelite men. But God doesn't condone rape. You trying to get away, huh? You trying to get away. You trying to make excuses. Well, maybe the Israelite men, they might be rapists. But how dare you, Khalil Amani, say that God is a rapist? Well, let's go over to Zechariah. And let me prove that God, the God of the Old Testament, he loves that thing called rape. Let me show it to you. Zechariah chapter 14, verse 2. I said Zechariah, the 14th chapter. It's titled Jerusalem and the Nations. Behold, the day of the Lord cometh, and thy spoil shall be divided in the midst of thee. Okay? So now we're talking about a day of the Lord is coming. The day of not Satan, not of Israel, not of the Hebrews, but a day of the Lord cometh. And you people, spoil shall be divided in the midst of thee. Here it is. For I, the Lord God of Israel, Yahweh, Jehovah, Yahweh, I, God, will gather all nations against Jerusalem to battle, and the city shall be taken, and the houses rifled, and the women ravished. And half of the city shall go forth into captivity, and the residue of the people shall not be cut off from the city. What does the word ravished means? What does that word mean? If you know, like I know, the word ravished means to rape. Let me show you something. Definition of ravish. Hold on. Definition of ravish. Definition of ravish. Okay.
Ravish.
What does it mean to ravish? You see right here? It says, this is God talking. God says He gonna do some shit. God is gonna gather all nations together to battle. And God says the houses will be rifled and the women ravished. God says He is gonna ravish women. What does it mean? Ravish. Seize and carry off someone by force. That's a good definition. Literary. Fill someone with intense delight, rapture. That's a good definition. What does ravishing a woman mean? Someone, usually a woman, called ravishing is stunningly beautiful. To ravish someone historically meant to plunder or violently seize and rape a woman. Uh-oh. There goes that word. So the word rape is synonymous with the word ravish. Now I know you don't believe me. It's old King James be watering shit down. But God says He's going to rape women in the last days. Now mind you, not personally, but He's going to have people that rape in His stead. But let's look at some other Bibles and see. Yeah. Let's see what other Bibles, if they use the word ravished or raped. Y'all know that woman, Gwinnetta Greer, that I be talking about all the time? She likes to use this word ravish, but she misuses the word. She always just say, Israel doctrine is like a ravished dog. That's not the way you use it. There's no such thing as a ravished dog. She means to say that the dog has rabies. And there's another word, like it's spelled, it fails me right now, but it'll come to me. But that ignorant woman, Gwinnetta Greer, the so-called YouTube streets queen, she loves to say, yeah, Israel doctrine, sometimes he be like a ravished dog. He be like a ravished dog. The word ravish means to rape. You don't rape a dog. She don't know what she's talking about. She don't know the proper meaning of the word ravished. Now, I want to go look at some other versions of the Bible to show you that God is a rapist. Let's start with the English Standard Version. We're talking about the book of Zechariah. Let's go look at that in Zechariah, shall we? Zechariah. Is Zechariah in this book? Amos, Zephaniah, Zechariah. I said we're looking at this is the English. This is the English Standard Version. Let's look at that verse. Zechariah 14:2. Behold, the day is coming for the Lord, when the spoil taken from you will be divided in your midst. For I will gather all nations against Jerusalem to battle, and the city shall be taken, and the houses plundered, and the women raped. So the English version actually says the word raped. I said the English, the ESV, English Standard Version, it does not use this euphemistic word. It doesn't use the euphemistic, the nice language, ravished, because some of you all, like that woman, Gwinnetta Greer, she doesn't know that ravish means to rape. So that's why she misuses it and says Israel doctrine acts like a ravished dog. A raped dog? If you don't shut up, stupid woman. But because people don't know what ravished means, we simply go over to the ESV, the English Standard Version, and they tell you women not ravished but raped. That's one version. Let's go look at the NIV, New International Version. Let's see what word it uses. Zechariah 14 of the NIV. A day of the Lord is coming, Jerusalem, when your possessions will be plundered and divided up within your very walls. I will gather all nations to Jerusalem to fight against it, and the city will be captured, and the houses ransacked, and the women raped. There it is again. That's two versions of the Bible that do not say ravished. They say raped. And who's talking? I, Jehovah, I, Yahweh, I, God, says he will do the raping. The women will be raped. That's two versions. And one more version, just to show you the New Oxford Annotated Bible. Because some of you all don't know what the word ravished means. And here again, Zechariah 14. Y'all hear my voices going? Yes. See, a day is coming for the Lord when the plunder taken from you will be divided in your midst. For I will gather all nations against Jerusalem to battle, and the city will be taken, and the houses looted, and the women raped, 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 raped. I'm going to have to go because, as you can hear, this is my third video today, and my voice is shot. But here, when King James says that the women, that God will ravish the women, that goes over your head if you don't know what ravished means. But here we have the ESV, the NIV, and the New Oxford Bible that don't use the word ravished. They use the word raped. And we are talking about the prophecy of what God is going to do. And so, why does God, in the end days, in the last days, why does God feel like he will cause women to be raped? Why does he care? Why does he do that? Because it goes back to the same things in the Old Testament where raping women was the order of the day. And anybody who teaches that God or the God of the Old Testament and that the Israelites of the Old Testament Anybody who say that they don't condone rape is a liar, because rape is everywhere present. It's even disguised and masked and euphemistically spoken of as having a wife. These wives that were captives and prisoners, they don't give their consent to be married. They have no choice in the matter. But this is the savagery of the God of the Old Testament and the savagery of the ancient Israelite men. Women are spoken of as the property of a man in their 10 commandments, but she falls second behind a man's house. She's not the most important. And when they go to war and they are victorious and they win and they take women prisoners, they dress up rape as marriage. They dress up rape by using euphemisms, nice language like she's now my wife. But if you ask that captive woman, does she love her new husband? Does she even like her new husband? And the answer will be hell no. And because she is not in control and has no say-so about who enters her body, that becomes rape. Dress it up however they want. Justify it however they want. But it is clear that these new-found wives have no say-so in getting married, and their husbands don't even love them. Their new husband, as it is stated, only desires them sexually. They get married to a man not based on love, simply based on desire, lust, wanting, yearning. I got to have that. That's rape, people. Piss on my head and tell me it's raining. That's what the Bible and these Christians and these Hebrew Israelites and these Israelites want you to believe about rape. Their book and their God and their laws condone rape, dressed up and euphemistically spoken of through the language of marriage and wife. We see through that, and that is my lesson on this part 4 of the savagery of the Lord God of Israel. I got to go. My voice is shot. You got the point. And there's more. There's scriptures that talk about a damsel being raped and having to marry the rapist, and her father gets 50 shekels. We'll get to all of that. My voice is gone. There are other examples of how a woman doesn't have a say-so in who gets in between her legs. Even Bathsheba had no say-so when a young David caught her bathing in the river. He didn't send one person. When King David saw a naked Bathsheba bathing in a river, he was on his rooftop and looked down and said, God damn, that's a baddie right there. That's a bad bitch. Look at the fucking ass on her. Look at the Titonians, the titties on her. I want that pussy. That's what King David said. He didn't send one person to invite her to come, to ask her if she would come to the palace. King David sent a garrison, an army, a multitude of men to her front door, knocked on the door and said, put some shit on, you coming with us. And they took Bathsheba to the royal palace where King David, who knew she was married, but he took the pussy. Bathsheba did not have jurisdiction over her own pussy. Bathsheba had no say-so over her own vagina. King David raped that woman. It was either rape through coercion or death for disobeying the king's orders. Nobody wants to die, so she went, knowing full well that the king was going to fuck the bejesus out of her, married as she was. There are other examples, but rape is absolutely the order of the day in the Old Testament. And because it is, this is why I know that the Bible's full of shit, and that the Bible is man-made, and that man created God. God did not create man in the Bible. This man-made God in the Old Testament, he makes excuses and justifications for the raping of women under the guise of they were married, and she became his wife. But we know for a fact these women prisoners, these women captors, were not consenting to their bodies being violated in the name of, I'm now married. They weren't. They just weren't. Common sense tells you these women were not wanting to marry their captors. Who would want to marry, again, what woman would want to marry the man that murders her father, her mother, and her brothers and uncles? Who would want to marry a man, you make me go bald-headed, you cut off my fingernails, you make me walk around damn near butt naked, and I gotta cry for a month, and then on day 31, you just come in there and slam fuck me? That's not love. That's called lust and desire. That's called fulfilling a man's lower regions, his passions and his desires and his lusts. Nothing about that relationship is about being a real wife or real love. Nothing. With that, y'all, I'll talk to you again. Take care. Peace.